Hey guys, this is Andrew with rockclass101.com, and in this mini lesson, Steven's going to be teaching you an original tune that I wrote, which I'm calling Goodbye Summer. So as the name implies, this is a tune that celebrates the end of the season, and for the most part, it is a cheerful sounding song, but there is a hint of bittersweet, which I think is a feeling that most of us feel when summer comes to a close. Now let's talk a little bit about this tune from a playing standpoint. This is a song that is largely strumming based. There is a little bit of finger picking sprinkled in, but for the most part, it is a strumming song. So if you are looking for an instrumental tune that you can learn that has you strumming more than finger picking, this is going to be a really good choice for you. And I'd say it's a solid intermediate level piece. Now, let's take a step back. Let's talk a little bit about this lesson, because in this video, Steven's going to be teaching you how to play the entire tune. But if you want to get the tabs to print off and follow along with, that's going to be available at this link right here. Or you can go to the site, rockclass101.com, do a search for ML29. That is the lesson number for this lesson. Don't forget too, on that page is the really cool interactive on-screen tab viewer. Now this is a great feature where you can hit play, you can watch the tab scroll across in real time, you can highlight bars to loop sections, slow it down to any speed you wish. Just a great asset in learning this tune that much easier. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Steven to teach you how to play this. Don't forget to grab the low G ukulele to follow along with, and I'll catch you at the end of the video.
Hi everyone, and welcome to this mini lesson on Goodbye Summer, which is another lovely little tune written by Andrew. And considering this is just a mini lesson, there's actually quite a lot going on in this piece which will really help develop and improve your playing. We're going to be using a combination of strumming and picking, so we'll get to practice switching between those two very different right hand styles throughout this piece. We'll be spending very little time down in first position, so this is a great opportunity to explore the neck with some quite unconventional chord shapes too. Now some of those chord shapes I'm afraid are bar chords, but that's okay because that's going to help us to build that all-important strength that we need in our fretting hand. So lots of skills and techniques that you'll be able to take with you and really help you develop as a player. Okay, so this piece was written for low G ukulele, but if you don't have a low G ukulele, I think you could get away with playing this one high G and still benefit from all those skills and techniques that I've mentioned. So whatever ukulele you're using, make sure it's tuned up and let's get into it. This piece is in 3/4 time, so we have 3 quarter note beats to each measure, and we're aiming for a fairly brisk tempo of 155 BPM. So with that in mind, measures 1 to 4 should sound like this. Okay, so measure 1 is all strumming, and we're playing the rhythm 1, 2 and 3 and, which we'll achieve with a down, down, up strum. Okay, so that's going to be over this D chord, which is the G string at the 7th, C string at the 6th, the E string at the 5th, and then the A string open. So on beat 1, we just do a down strum of all 4 strings, that full chord there. And that's beat 1. That rings for a quarter note, and then on beat 2, we hit it again with a down strum. And then we do an up strum on the and of beat 2, another down strum on beat 3, followed by another up strum on the and of beat 3. So that's our down, down, up, 1, 2 and 3 and. Okay, so that's measure 1. If we take that into measure 2, we're playing the rhythm 1, 2, 3, so just all quarter notes in this measure. Beat 1 is another down strum of that D chord. So we hit that on beat 1, as I say, rings for a quarter note, but now we're going to switch to picking. So on beat 2, we want to play the E string at the 7th fret. We'll keep the D chord held, and we'll just add the pinky onto that E string at the 7th, and then we just pick that single note on beat 2. Okay, and then beat 3, we're going to go to the A string at the 5th. But rather than just use the first finger to play that single note, to help us transition into the next measure, measure 3, I would advise doing a full bar across the 5th fret with that first finger, okay? Which seems extreme to play just this single note, but like I say, it will help you transition into this bar chord, which is coming up in the next measure. So to play that A string at the 5th, just make sure that the pressure on the bar is nice and firm on that A string so that we get that note coming through nice and clear. Okay, so just measures 1 and 2 so far. We have okay, so then if we take that into measure 3, we're now going to want this G major 7 chord, but this bar version of it. And the way we're going to get into that is we're going to have this bar on, which we've put on at the end of measure 2. These 2 fingers can come off, and then the 3rd finger is going to come over onto the A string at the 7th. Okay, so this isn't the G major 7 chord. The G major 7 chord is 2 frets higher than that, but we're going to get into that chord with a quite quick slide. Okay, so the first beat of measure 3 is going to be this, that kind of slide sound there. So it is quite quick. We don't want to hear this 5th fret bar chord. We don't really want that to ring because that's the wrong chord. We don't want to hear that. That's just kind of our starting position. As soon as we hit those 4 strings, we slide that chord up 2 frets into that 7-9 position. Okay, so beat 1, we're in that G major 7 position, and then that rings for 2 beats now. So that rings over beat 2, and then on beat 3, we're going to take off this 3rd finger and then just play this full 7th fret bar on beat 3. And we'll achieve that with a down strum as well. Okay, so measure 3 is fairly straightforward. It's just that slide, which, to be fair, that's quite tricky. So I'll say it's straightforward. There's not a lot going on in this measure, but that first slide is a little bit tricky. Might take a bit of practice. And that's it. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so I'll put that together with measures 1 and 2 before we look at the final measure in this section, measure 4. So measures 1, 2, and 3, a little bit slower than the kind of desired tempo. Okay, so if we then take that into measure 4, we're playing the same rhythm that we've just played in measure 3, so just on beats 1 and then on beat 3. So beat 1 is this G chord, and I think this is a fairly tricky change here as well to get from this bar across the 7th fret. We want to hop this 1st finger over onto the A string 5th, and then the 2nd and 3rd fingers are going to come onto the E and the C string at the 7th fret with the G string open. Okay, so that version of a G chord is okay to hold on its own. It's a fairly straightforward chord, but to get into it quite quickly from this 7th fret bar is quite tricky. So I would probably practice just that chord change, kind of do those finger push-ups. And just practice that in isolation a few times just to kind of get that muscle memory so that chord change is nice and clean when we move into measure 4 there. Okay, so once we start measure 4, then we're on that G chord. So like we've just done, we do a down strum of that full chord on beat 1. That rings over beat 2 like we did in the previous measure. And then on beat 3, what we're going to do is just add our pinky onto the A string at the 7th and then play that full chord on beat 3. Okay. And again, just to kind of help the transition into the next measure, which we'll look at shortly, when you add the pinky onto the A string 7th, I'd probably take the 1st finger off the 5th fret behind and just move it over towards the E string so it's ready to reform that D chord for the start of measure 5. Okay, so measures 1 to 4 once again. Okay, so let's have a go at playing those 4 measures through a little bit slower than that together now. 1, 2, 3. So on to measures 5 through to 8. They should sound like this. Okay, so measures 5 and 6 are just the same as measures 1 and 2, so we're on that D chord again. And just make sure you end on that full 5th fret bar at the end of measure 6. And then into measures 7 and 8, we have the same rhythm as measures 3 and 4, but just different melody notes. And in fact, the first chord is the same as measure 3, so we're going to do this slide up into this G major 7 chord on beat 1. We let that ring over beat 2, and then on beat 3, keep that chord held, and then just add the pinky onto the A string at the 10th fret. Leave the 3rd finger on though, because we'll come back to it in the next measure. So play that chord on beat 3, full chord, full down strum, making sure you pick out that A string 10th as the melody note, so make sure we hear that coming through nice and loud. And then into measure 8 on beat 1, we just take that pinky off, back to that G major 7 chord. That rings over beat 2, and then on beat 3, we just take off the 3rd finger and play a down strum off that 7th fret bar. Okay, so just measures 7 and 8. Nice, and then with measures 5 and 6. So let's have a go at playing those 4 measures through together now. 1, 2, 3. So measures 9 through to 12 are just the same as measures 1 to 4, so we're just repeating those 4 bars again, starting on this D chord. Okay, and then into measures 13 through to 16, these actually are very, very similar to measures 5 to 8 with just one difference. So measures 13 and 14 are just the same as measures 5 and 6. Just that D chord strumming section again. But then into measure 15, this differs from measure 7 in that we play the G major 7 chord again on beat 2, and that's the only difference between this and measure 7. So we start in the same way, where we slide into that G major 7 chord, but then instead of letting that ring over beat 2, we just strum it again on beat 2. Okay, so we have 1, 2. Okay, but then the rest of this measure and the next measure, measure 16, we've seen before. So beat 3 of measure 15, we add the pinky onto the 10th, leaving the 3rd finger on. And then into measure 16, beat 1, we take the pinky off. And then on beat 3, we take the 3rd finger off. Okay, so largely the same as measures 7 and 8, just that extra chord hit on beat 2 there on measure 15. So those two measures, measures 15 and 16. Okay, now put those together with measures 13 and 14. Nice. So let's have a go at playing those 4 measures, measures 13 through to 16 together now. 1, 2, 3. So on to measures 17 through to 20, they should sound like this. Okay, so measures 17 and 18 are rhythmically just the same as measures 1 and 2. So measure 17, we're playing that 1, 2 and 3 and, which we achieve with that down, down, up strum. Okay, but this time it's going to be over this G add 9 chord, which is the A string open, and then the E and the C strings at the 7th fret, which we'll play with the 2nd and 3rd fingers, and then G string open. So like in measure 1, we do a down strum, followed by a down, up on beats 2 and 3 and. Okay, and then into measure 18, we're going to drop that E string down to the 5th fret, so leave the 2nd finger on. First finger goes onto the E string 5th, and the 3rd finger comes off, and then we'll hit all 4 strings with a down strum on beat 1. And then on beat 2, we'll bring this E string back up to the 7th, so that 3rd finger goes back on, but then we just pick that single note. And then on beat 3, we're going to play the A string at the 5th fret. We don't need to do a kind of bar thing here like we've done in the past, so we'll just lift the 1st finger over and play that single note A string 5th on beat 3. Okay, so measure 17 and 18 once again. Brill. Then if we take that into measures 19 and 20, we're just playing on the beat for both of these two measures. So measure 19, we start on this G6 chord, which is mostly in position already. So these 2 fingers stay on. The pinky goes on to the A string at the 7th fret to complete that chord. But I would leave the 1st finger on the 5th fret behind because we're going to pull this pinky off onto that note on beat 2, but for now, beat 1, we just do a down strum of that G6 chord. Okay, and then on beat 2, like I say, let all that ring, but we'll just pull the pinky off onto that 5th fret note there. So beats 1 and beat 2, that's what we're going for there. And then for the rest of this measure and measure 20, we just leave that chord held and pick single notes of this chord. So beat 3 of measure 19 is the E string 7th. And then into measure 20, we play the A string 5th on beat 1, then the E string on beat 2, and then down to the C string on beat 3. Okay, so that measure 19 and 20 should sound like this. Brill. And then with measure 17 and 18 once again. Nice. So let's have a go at playing those 4 measures through together now. 1, 2, 3. On to measures 21 through to 24, they should sound like this. Okay, so measures 21 and 22 are just the same as measures 17 and 18, so that G add 9 chord. And then measure 23, rhythmically, same as measure 19, we're just playing on the beat for this measure and the next measure. And we start the same way in that we go into this G6 chord, so beat 1 of measure 23, pinky goes on to complete that G6 chord. Again, keep that 1st finger on. So we play that chord on beat 1, and then on beat 2, we take that pinky off and then just do another full strum of that chord. Just making sure each time we do this that we're hitting that A string nice and loud, because that A string is our melody note throughout these measures. And then on beat 3, we put that pinky back on to the 7th fret and do a full strum of that chord on beat 3. Okay, so we're just changing that melody note from 7 to 5 back to 7. Okay, and then into measure 24, we want to turn this into that G major 7 shape that we've seen before. So to get into this, what we'll do, keep that pinky on the A string at the 7th and then slide it up 2 frets to the 9th. As you do that, release the pressure off the other 3 fingers. Let the 2nd and 3rd fingers come away. Move the 1st finger over into this bar position and then bar the 7th fret with the pinky on the A string 9th. And we play that on beat 1. And then on beat 2, we just move that melody note up 1 fret to the 10th. So the pinky just slides up 1 fret. Play that chord on beat 2. And then to finish this measure, we just slide that melody note up 2 more frets to the 12th. So again, the pinky will do that, up another 2 frets, up to the 12th fret. And that is quite tricky, to use the pinky to keep shifting melody notes and then to be in this kind of bar stretched position at the end of measure 24. It does get a bit taxing at that point there. So again, just practice this. You may not have the strength in your fretting hand at this stage to hold all these bar chords. If this is new to you, if you don't often do bar chords, but just go slow, take it a little bit at a time. If your hand does start getting a bit fatigued with all this barring, just, take it off, shake it off, give it a break for a while and come back to it later. Don't get yourself to the point where you're just in agony trying to do all these bar chords, little and often, and that strength will build up over time. Okay, so that measure 23 and 24 once again. And then with measures 21 and 22. Brilliant. So let's have a go at playing those 4 measures through together now. 1, 2, 3. So the next 4 measures, measures 25 through to 28, are just the same as measures 1 to 4. So we're going back to that D chord shape and playing those 4 measures once again. Okay, and then if we take that into the next 4 measures, measures 29 through to 32, they should sound like this. Okay, so measures 29 and 30 again are just the same as measures 1 and 2. There's only one slight difference though, not to the music, but in terms of how we play it. What I would do at the end of measure 30, which would be like the end of measure 2, what we did every other time we've done this is put our first finger bar across the 5th fret. But this time when we get to the end of measure 30, we don't need that bar in the next measure, so we'll just use the first finger to just hold that single note, the A string at the 5th. Okay, so measure 29, just that usual D chord strum, down strum on beat 1 of measure 30, pinky goes onto the A string 7th for beat 2. As we're doing that, we'll just lift that first finger over onto the A string to the 5th fret, and then we just pick that on beat 3. Okay, and that's going to make it easier then to transition into this next chord, which we haven't seen before. This is now a D add 9 chord at the start of measure 31, but pretty easy from here, because all we need to do is lift our pinky over onto the A string 7th, so that we have the E string open and our 2nd and 3rd fingers just where they were when they were playing the D chord previously. Okay, but I would leave that first finger on the A string 5th, because once we've done this down strum of the D add 9 chord on beat 1, we're going to pull that pinky off onto that A string 5th to achieve our beat 2 note. Okay, like that. And then on beat 3 of measure 31, we're just going to add that pinky back onto the E string 7th and pick that single note there on beat 3. Okay, so just measure 31. Nice. And then into measure 32, again, we're just going to play on the beat. Beat 1 is the A string 5th. Beat 2 is the E string 7th, which we're holding already. And then on beat 3, we're going to play the A string open. So we'll take the first finger off to open up the A as we play that on beat 3. Okay. So measures 31 and 32. Try that again. Nice. And then with measures 29 and 30. Brilliant. So let's have a go at playing those 4 measures through together now. 1, 2, 3. So the next 6 measures of the piece are essentially just 2 measures repeated 3 times, and those 2 measures should sound like this. Okay, so it's a familiar rhythm here. It's the same rhythm as measures 1 and 2. So for measure 33, we have that familiar strumming pattern of down, down, up, but we're doing that over an A chord now. Okay, so down on beat 1, followed by our down, up on beats 2 and 3 and 1, 2 and 3 and. Okay, then into measure 34, beat 1, another down strum of that A chord, and then on beat 2 we do a single note pick of the E string at the 2nd fret, so the 3rd finger will go on to take that, but we'll leave the A chord on as we do that so it can all ring over. So beat 2, E string 2nd, and then on beat 3 we move that up to the E string 3rd, and the pinky can take that and pick that on beat 3. So just measure 34, and then with measure 33. Okay, so now we know those 2 measures, we just repeat them again for measures 35 and 36. And then we do it again for measures 37 and 38. Okay, so 2 measures repeated 3 times. And then into the final 2 measures, measures 39 and 40, they should sound like this. Okay, so measure 39 is just this A chord that we're already holding, so a down strum of that chord on beat 1. And then on beat 2, we come up to the A string at the 2nd fret, so the 3rd finger goes on, and then we pick that melody note on beat 2. And then on beat 3, we just want to move that melody note up 2 frets to the A string 4th fret, so the pinky will go on to play that. Okay, and then into measure 40, we want to move up to this A6 chord, so leave the pinky on, take these 2 fingers off and slide that pinky up to the 9th fret on the A string. When you get there, add the 3rd finger onto the C string at the 9th, and then we'll do a down strum of that chord, but avoid the G string on this chord because that won't sound right with this A6 chord. So start at the C string and strum down through those 3 strings. Okay, but try and make sure you hear that A string 9th as the melody note. Okay, so that's beat 1 of measure 40. On beat 2, we're going to achieve this A string 7th note with a pull off. So put the 1st finger onto the A string 7th and then pull the pinky off onto that note. So we get that on beat 2. Okay, and then on beat 3, just to finish off, we're going to come to this E string at the 10th fret. So the pinky will go on to take that. Okay, so just measure 40. And then with measure 39. Nice. Okay, so let's have a go at playing measures 37 through to 40 together now. 1, 2, 3. So once we've played measure 40, we just repeat back to the start and play the whole thing through again. We can see there though on the tab it says fade on repeat, and you'll have heard that in the performance video. We just kind of fade out halfway through the 2nd playthrough. Now I suppose if you're playing this on your own at home, practicing it, I suppose you can't fade yourself out in real time. So if you wanted a way to kind of end this piece, I suppose what we could do is maybe play the whole thing through twice. And then when we get to measure 40, the 2nd time round, we could just finish off after that E string 10th. We could just come to this full D chord with that A string in the 5th as our melody. And I think that would sound quite nice. So if I play measures 39 and 40 and then move into this D chord just to finish off, that would sound like this. And I think that sounds quite nice there. Just a simple way just to finish that piece, to give it that kind of end. And you could even, if you played this through twice and that was your second run through, you could maybe even slow things down through measures 39 and 40 into that final chord. Just do a ritardando there just to give it that kind of finality. Okay, so once again, 39 and 40 with this addition of the D chord at the end with the slowdown. Okay, so just an idea there for you, just to finish off this piece. Okay, so I hope you have loads of fun learning this one. Look after yourselves, and I will see you next time.
Alright guys, so I hope you enjoyed learning this tune. It's a really fun strumming tune to play and a great one to cap off the end of summer with. Now before we wrap up, I do want to give you a friendly reminder that if you did want to get the tabs to print off and keep for your records, that was available at this link right here. Or you can go to the site, rockclass101.com, do a search for ML29. That was the lesson number for this lesson. Don't forget too, on that page was the really cool interactive on-screen tab viewer. So you can literally hit play, watch that tab scroll across in real time, highlight bars, loop sections, slow it down, all that fun jazz. So guys, again, I hope you enjoyed learning this, and we will catch you in the next lesson. Take care.